Oh, there we go.
Okay, so we're now on YouTube there.
Okay.
All right, so here we go in three, in two, and one. Like we were saying last time, I'm really glad that both of you have decided to join me again for a part two, basically repeat. Both of you now are proud repeat offenders here at Aaron's Opinion. And I thought it would be really fun for us to geek out for an hour and a half about the nitty gritty of film production, the technology that's used, how blind people do this from a blindness perspective, the ingredients of film production. So, whoever wants to get this started, just start talking about how you actually produce a film from a blindness perspective, all the technology that's involved, the whole A to Z. So, whoever wants to dive in, just go in head first. Let's go.
Shay, would you like to start first or would you like me to go?
No, you go ahead and go first.
Okay, so I've done a lot of different theater productions early on and then later moving into film productions, and a lot of the work that I do is usually in front of the camera stuff, but I do some behind the camera stuff as well. I do a lot of the writing process. I compose the music for a lot of our films, and I'm most often the one who ironically does the stunt coordinator, which I say ironically because I've got less of the vision, but that usually comes through because I'm the one who has to make sure it's the most safe for any of our blind and other disabilities cast and such, you know? And so that's probably my biggest job is figuring out how to make sure that sets are accessible. And so one of the methods that I'll usually do for that is well before we even start filming, after we've selected the set we're going to film on, is I will take and I'll walk it first, of course, with my cane, and I'll familiarize myself with any obstructions that are in the way. And if it's just a walking scene, it won't be too much more difficult than that. I'll know the path to walk and I can then walk it myself without a cane. And if I have other blind people I'm working with who are going to be performing without a cane for whatever reason, and they're blinder than I am or equal blindness to the point where they don't in their normal day-to-day lives maneuver without a cane, then I can help orientate them to the set and figure out the safest way to walk. But if it's a scene that includes something more than walking, then we have to figure out what's the easiest way to make it so they can maneuver around, especially if there's a lot of different set pieces to get around. And there can be a lot of little things that you don't really think about. Like for the film project we recently did, Clock Blocked, there's a scene that my character goes and runs and they tackle my sister's character. And well, so I have to run up from behind her and we have to run across this hallway entrance to make it look like I actually tackle her. And then with camera trickery, of course, we switch angles so you don't actually see her fall, because that's not nearly as safe as we'd like to do with blind people. And so what we did with that was, like I said, we did the camera trickery, but even with that shot, the place where he filmed the scene at, there was this fire extinguisher that my arm kept bumping. And one of the things that I'll do as a cheat trick is, well, with that shot, I would lightly graze the wall with my fingertips so that way I could find her and find the edge of the wall and grab her and make it look like I was taking her down. but my hand kept hitting the fire extinguisher, which was making it rock, and I kept worrying it was going to fall on one of us. And so we just simple fix, move the fire extinguisher out of shot and then put it back up when we're done. But when you're filming as a blind person, you have to be aware of all those little tiny things that could really get a person injured if you're not paying attention.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's very, very interesting. Shay, do you want to add to that, by the way?
Um, she pretty much covered it, but yeah, like there's a lot that definitely goes into even just the preparing of doing a shoot. You know, you have to gauge all the details, um, you know, scoping the location, making sure that, you know, there'll be safe, you know, what you're going to be doing, blocking the takes before doing them, and then, you know, hopefully afterwards they'll be able to just flow just fine. But you know, sometimes things happen. I mean, that's the way it is even for normal people in the industry. It's you basically have flubs sometimes, and it's just a thing. But you know, um it is a little more difficult when you're a visually impaired person or blind, because you have to be more meticulous about those specific things. um The one thing that I, you know, kind of wish that I could be using more often, that Phoenix had come up with years ago, was the these little pieces of um, carpet and string, and using gaffing tape that you put on the ground to cover it, and those would be like lines to for a person who is trying to do different um, blocked scenes and stuff, to be able to move around to those specific textured areas. And, you know, it'd be nice to be able to use that sort of blocking more in filmmaking than just like theater. But um, it was a very innovative thing at the time. We were still back in high school when that, to high school, I think, post high school, I think. Can't remember. Was it during high school, Phoenix?
That was yeah, that was like I think senior year. It was with this visually impaired performing group that I created called Visually Impaired Performers, or VIP, because we thought it was cute and clever. And it was basically a troupe of 4, 5, 6 blind and visually impaired people going around and doing variety performing, you know, songs, skits, comedy routines, etc. And yeah, we wanted to find ways to make it easy for people to not be tripping over each other's canes. And at first what we did is we'd have this line that we could put down, and people could follow, and one person, the first one, would have their cane and they'd trail it, and everyone would kind of sighted guide with one specific arm and follow behind each other. And it was really well, it was really lo-fi, you can tell. And it's something that over time they added in, like bath mat placemats for putting in front of chairs so people could find out where their chair was, and they could count, okay, I need to go to the third bath mat so I can get to the third chair. And I don't know if I specifically thought of it though, but it was something that I was involved with helping in the creation of. But of course, there are other methods you can use. You can use the tape and string that they use for goal ball, uh, to mark the courts and stuff like that. You can use those and such. Of course, you'll want to have good shoes that you can really well feel the ground through and stuff when you do these, which is probably why I wear Converse shoes in most of my film performances, because they've got those really thin soles that I can practically feel everything through.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is really, really interesting. Yeah. So, how do you go about learning these various techniques that you've mentioned? I mean, they're all interesting techniques, but when both of you were studying film, did any, I guess what most people would want to know, myself included, is did any professor ever come to you or mention, so how would you guys keep blind people safe and productive on a set? I mean, did anyone bring that up? And I mean, how did you deal with that? And how did you develop these various techniques? Because it's very interesting to me, considering that I want to be in a production. I'm very, interested in that. So tell us.
I think
Well,
in a lot of cases it was trial and error, actually. I don't think really we didn't have people coming to us because I don't think they even knew. They you know,
yeah,
that's the biggest problem is that these people who teach these things, they're used to, able-bodied people doing it. They're not used to people who have disabilities doing the exact same things. So it kind of requires the people who are sitting in those shoes to come up with the creative ideas and brainchilds and stuff to do the workarounds, because who else is going to do it except that? I mean, unless somebody who's able-bodied has done a lot of study into that specific disability. And even then, there's still some gray areas where they may not know, and so yeah, it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of years of practice, and thinking outside the box. And that's kind of one
yeah,
of those things.
it's absolutely something that you're probably more likely going to have to figure out for yourself. There's no specific classes. Like when I was in college, I was taking an experimental theater and music class, and I had this performance I was going to do with all these set pieces. And I had to try and figure out, well, for this particular role, I had to move around all these little fake walls so I could be encroaching upon this person's apartment setup. And so I had to wheel them out of the way and come in more and more. And they were little light things. They were basically about as heavy as like those clothing racks on wheels. So it's nothing too strenuous. But I didn't want to fumble around with my cane with that. And I was also supposed to make a phone, pretend to be on the phone during that. And I'm like, I don't want to fumble around with a cane and a phone and also having to move these pieces. Plus, I was playing an FBI agent. So it didn't really seem like it made sense to have my cane with me at that point. And so after class, one of the days, I went to my teacher and I asked him, okay, do you have any ideas on any ways I can maneuver around this set without it looking awkward and clumsy? Because I don't want to be bumping around and ruin the performance and all this stuff. And he's like, well, why don't you use your cane? And I explained that, I don't want to have this extra load in my hand. And he's like, well, the cane could symbolize justice is blind. And I'm like, absolutely not. We are not turning my disability into some metaphor, especially a negative one. And so he's like, okay, so maybe you can just kind of feel around in front of you. And he's kind of waving his hand in front of him when he does this. He's like, you can feel around in front of you for the sets. And I'm thinking, okay, this is going to look ridiculous. But then he waved it in just the right way. And it looked a little like a low block for martial arts. And I'm like, wait, I know karate. I can just do karate blocks and punches and stuff like that and make it look like I'm fighting my way in, when in reality, I'm actually feeling around for the sets. But in order to do this, I had to spend countless hours of extra time just there choreographing this routine before and after everybody else. First one to class, last one to leave. And just yeah, on performance day, I didn't set up my set and somebody else did, and I kind of accidentally hit somebody in the front row with one of these things because I didn't place it exactly where I had. But other than that, no real injuries were to be had. So I guess win. But
Absolutely.
chances are in this field, you're going to have to be the one to self-advocate for yourself because a lot of us are still pioneers and we're the we're some of the first or some of the few, and we know our limitations and our strengths better than anybody else.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I completely understand what you mean. And I would have told you to use a cane on set as well, not to make a incredibly insensitive, disrespectful metaphor about blind people, but because let's say in real life that you are a blind FBI agent, you would be using a cane if you were going into a building or walking up to someone's house. So, that would add realism to it. That would add a greater sense of reality to a scene. But I can also understand where you wouldn't want to use a cane, but I don't know. But for me, a cane is just the way that I show sighted people that I'm blind. So, that's my
Yeah.
philosophy about that. But no, I would have just used the cane and just
Yes.
thought, well, I'm just a person who's acting in a role, but I also happen to be a blind person. Blind people use canes. So.
Yes. And to that end, I'll say that I play both blind and not blind people sometimes. And so that's the reason why, in that particular case, my character was not specifically blind, so they didn't need the cane to signify blindness. If the
Right.
character was blind, then by all means, I would have absolutely used the cane. I've used it in a few different stage performances and a film performance before. Hilariously, I got a YouTube comment at one point about how I had really bad blind acting, and I'm like, I've been blind all my life. How is my acting bad? As a blind person, I'm literally doing just what I normally do.
You see, that's the
Unless they
problem.
thought, yeah, unless they thought that you were a sighted person pretending to portray a blind person.
Which is probably what they thought. And I mean, there's other comments in that video, like, if they're blind, why do they need to use the light?
Yeah, see here's the thing, that's one of those big rabbit holes that you could just go on and on down through for forever. But stereotypes in film about blind people is absolutely so atrocious that it's, one of those things that as Phoenix and I are trying to do, along with other blind influencers and, performers and actors, is we're trying to get rid of some of that stereotype because it is awful. It is absolutely terrible, and it's been in our film industry for decades, and it needs to change. Because yeah, the fact that as she said, she got a comment saying she was doing bad blind acting. It's like apparently that person had a specific view and stereotype of what a blind person should be and do, and that's not a good thing. I mean, it's kind of one of those double-edged swords because considering like also was said, they could have thought she was a sighted person trying to play a blind person, but still it still comes out the same connotation that it's bad because they're still giving off the stereotype that there should be a specific look, specific way, specific anything and everything how a blind person should be on screen. And yeah, it's a very deep rabbit hole to go down.
And honestly, I will be the first to admit that there was a lot of bad acting in that film because, it was my first encounter with film. It just wasn't my blindness that was the issue. It was my dialogue, it was my timing, a billion other things that were wrong with it. Just
I
not
mean,
the blind.
the story arc was fine. The story arc itself was fine. It's just it was my first big student film for one. Vanished was what it was called, about the whole world kind of vanishing, and only a couple specific few people are left behind, kind of a sci-fi sort of deal. Um, Hoping to actually kind of redo it and do it better, because it is a good uh, plot, but yeah, it was a rough student film.
Yes,
And
very rough.
Well, that's very interesting. So, I mean, when you really philosophize and kind of joke around about it a little, we all have to be able to make fun of ourselves. Maybe that commenter was kind of right. Maybe in that case, since it was your first film and since your acting wasn't very good in that instance, maybe you were a bad blind. Maybe that was bad blind acting in that moment. You never know. But you could have also commented back to that person, you're a bad blind viewer. Maybe they have a viewing problem. Maybe they aren't holding their phone at the right angle to catch the right to catch the right angle of you. Maybe it's an operator error thing. I mean, just could
I
be.
like that. I really like that. That's good.
But
That's a
but
good
then
one.
but then again, you could have. But then again, I mean, even though they were just being rude, maybe, who knows? Maybe since you admitted that it wasn't your best acting, maybe it was an example of bad blind acting. Maybe it literally was, because maybe at that moment you hadn't fully honed the skill or fully honed the craft at that moment in time. Now you've improved it, obviously, but maybe then,
Yeah.
maybe not. I don't know. Yeah.
It was bad blind acting, not in the sense of a person acting like they're being blind, being bad.
Yeah.
It's an example of a blind person acting bad.
Right. Yeah.
Is
But
what it
right.
was.
But Phoenix, it's still, we still can't escape this. It's still a blind person. Whether they're acting badly or well, they're still a blind person. So
Yeah,
see
that's the
the,
thing. Yeah.
but that's also the beauty of it. I take these things, and I will tell you that if anybody has received negative, uh, well, let me just put it to you both like this. If anybody knows the definition of a backhanded compliment, it's to be a podcaster who interviews people with disabilities all over the world. That is the epitome of backhanded compliment. And what I mean is I've gotten just as much negative feedback as I have gotten appreciation from people like you. And that's why we're talking again, for, as I call it, a repeat offender like this. That's why we're having the second conversation, because both of you appreciate what I do. But let me warn you ahead of time that not everybody appreciates what we do in the podcast space. And there's a lot of complaints. You would be surprised. There's a ton of complaints that someone can come up with. So it is a very interesting thing. So not to um not to reinforce stereotypes, and either one of you can answer. So what are um some really weird stereotypes that you've heard of about, blind people in the film industry? Because I mean, I just want to learn about it, for one. For another, it's a little bit interesting. For a third thing, the film industry is a stereotype of society in itself. So there's going to be stereotypes. What do both of you think on that?
Well, I know that I have seen a lot of different things about blindness in film because as a filmmaker, you know, you gotta like to watch films as much as you like to make them, especially the fact if you want to actually, get ideas and know what to do and what not to do in a film, you have to sit down and actually watch stuff. So, like, for instance, the biggest one, oh my God, the biggest one is um glasses, wearing glasses.
Oh, yes. I still, as recently as October of 2023, have been asked in public, "You're blind, but you're not wearing dark glasses inside."
And where that comes from is actually two musicians who
No,
actually,
it's just a stereotype in general, you know.
yeah,
I don't
but
think we can pinpoint it just on.
I think because the fact that Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles both had their moments of wearing them, it's like that seeing it, it gets burned into the back of people's minds. I mean, yeah, it's been a thing for years and years, but when something iconic is portraying it, then it kind of just becomes etched into a person's head. There was this TikTok I watched the other day that was talking about how people rationalize rabbits eating carrots. And technically, rabbits really shouldn't be because it's high in sugar. But they rationalize that because they watched Bugs Bunny. So that kind of trailed up to, today. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. Where some of those things that kind of get in our brains come from is visually seeing it on a screen or in person. And not to say that, Stevie Wonder or Ray Charles are bad. They probably really need those glasses. They probably liked wearing them. Who knows?
It's a matter of, well, like when I was working at a restaurant, I had a job coach at one point tell me that I needed to get dark glasses so that way I wouldn't make the customers feel uncomfortable. And, so I wanted to keep my job. So I naturally went out and got myself a pair of sunglasses, even though it was the middle of winter and I needed to get somewhere I had enough sight that I could still see, but were dark enough to hide my eyes. So this ended up being an $85 pair of sunglasses. And this is $85 in 2005 money. So you can imagine what that looks like today. But yeah, it's really a lot of people do it because the stereotype exists and there's the let's make the able-bodied people feel comfortable. And heck, I remember even being told when I was in high school at a deaf and blind school, I was going to do some stuff on a local news channel where I was going to get interviewed. And one of the staff at the school asked me if I'd wear my sunglasses so I'd look more blind. And it's just so ingrained in society that we just haven't gotten past that decades later.
Yeah, that one's a big one. Luckily nobody's ever told me to wear glasses. So, nobody's really making an issue of it. But I think it depends on which part of the country you're in. And I live in a part of the country where it's very sunny, so I think everybody's used to see that. See, that's the thing. If you live in a part of the country where it's sunny all the time and everybody else is wearing sunglasses, then they don't really notice the fact that you're wearing sunglasses. Then it's not noticeable. Yeah.
That's completely fair.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Mhm.
another couple examples.
Sure.
Let's see. I know that like rocking is another one.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, that's another one of those big ones. And yes, there are some who rock, but a lot of those people actually have other underlying conditions that actually cause that. And it's also
It's on the
considered
balance
a
too.
spatial awareness problem because people who tend to do it are trying to, I guess, rebalance or recalibrate their spatial awareness. Um, while others, it's a tick of sorts that they do. But it's not every blind person, and that's another one of those things though that they find that seems to be blind people in general. Um, let's see. Sometimes walking, the way people walk. Like I've watched a lot of different films where people have tried to play a blind person and they walk like a penguin.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so weird sometimes. So,
What's that about? Because that really weirds me. That is some weird acting. That is some weird stuff when people do that. What are they trying to portray? I mean, I really have to stop and wonder.
I don't know. Maybe
That's a good
well, go ahead. Go ahead, Phoenix.
question. No, go ahead.
Okay. So I think it's partially again about like s- you know, stereotyping spatial awareness. Um the speed at which blind people would probably move. Um I'm guessing that they're taking from people who are blind who do sometimes actually shuffle their feet at when they walk. I don't know.
Yeah. It
But
might
it's
also be an effort to slow down their own normal walking pace because of thinking that blind people tend to move slower, which I know a lot of blind people who could prove them wrong.
yeah.
Shay's one of them.
Yeah, and your sister is another who can, geez, her strides are like, oh my God, I can't even keep up with her.
I'm
It's,
2 steps for every one of hers.
yeah, I know. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of where they get is they think people who are blind walk slow, and a lot of us actually walk pretty normal, actually,
And
with normal strides.
and there are some that do walk slow, but just like able-bodied, you got people on all sides of the spectrum. You got the slow walkers, the fast walkers, etc.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
And it honestly is more based on, I would think, the angle of the disability. Because, like I said, a lot of cases when there's other physical attributes included into like the thing, like for disabilities, when there's other disabilities included, that's when a lot of those things are there. It really doesn't have to usually do with blindness. It has to do with something else that may be underlying in that whole disability thing. It could be a different disability on top of it, but that's one of those things you have to kind of to gauge, like, does this person have more than one disability? You know.
It's also a matter of how comfortable you are in your space too, though. I mean,
Mhm.
for example, people who are new to visual impairment, they're obviously going to be a lot less confident in their walk than someone who's lived with it for 20, 30, 40 years is going to be. And if someone's vision is declining over time, then they're constantly having to get used to a new normal. So that could be something that causes them to walk differently. Or there's a lot of different factors to put into why a person's going to move the way they do, or what they're going to do when it comes to spatial awareness. um I don't move the same way that Shay does or that my sister does. And I mean, we've all three had vision loss since birth, but we all three have very different experiences with it, as does literally every blind and visually impaired person out there. So you're not going to find two that are exactly alike. There's going to be the people who prefer to use a roller tip versus the people who prefer the two-touch method, etc. Some people are comfortable with sighted guides. Some people don't want to touch another person and don't want them touching them. Some people love dogs, etc.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some other maybe a couple more big stereotypes or a couple big things that both of you have seen that really puzzle you or really baffle you about the different expectations of blind people in film. What are some other things that both of you have already seen? Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
hmm. I would say another one would probably be, and it can vary on this one, um, because there is a chance that a lot of people don't do it, but there's also a chance that a lot of people do as blind people, is looking directly at the person when they're talking. Like, I know that if I'm going to be talking to somebody, whether I can see them or not, I'm going to look in their direction. I'm not just going to sit there staring off into space with a 1,000-yard stare. But there are people who, um, I think I've met a couple of them even, who will actually kind of use one eye sometimes to actually look at the person. Their whatever their good eye is, but they're still trying to look at that person, even if it seems like they're kind of not, you know. And if they're fully blind, often they'll still turn their face. Usually, a person just automatically usually turns their face to actually try and engage with that person, whether they can see them or not. And a lot of cases in film, there's that thing where they kind of just sit there. you know? They verbally engage, but they don't actively engage. So,
okay. So this isn't a stereotype. It's more of a trope on this end, but the disability you're going to add in and literally magic away, where the disability, um, I think the best example I can give is Geordi from Star Trek. They
Oh yeah,
make, and then
yeah.
they've got this visor that literally fixes every problem that he has with it anyway, so that way they never have to address it unless they turn him into, okay, then you have the victim complex trope, which is a whole different trope. The villain victim trope with disabled. But
And
I'll circle back around to that one.
okay,
But
circle
a
back to
lot of
that. Yeah.
times when you've got tropes where it has a blind person, they're going to be able to, in Star Wars, use the Force, or in Star Trek, use a special visor, or in some fantasy movie, they'll be able to use a magic device or a spell or something that makes it so you're blind, but you're really not. And so you never have to address that situation. You never do anything with it. It's just saying, oh, well, we got a blind face in the room, you know? But like with Star Trek specifically, they would do stories where they would do allegories for disability, but then they'd put it on an able-bodied person, like getting rid of Deanna Troy's empathy, when I'm like, you literally have a blind person right there. Why are you not using them as a platform to discuss your disability and disability allegories? It's right there, and you're doing nothing with him.
Yeah, I love Jordy though. Aside from the fact that, that was a definite trope. I mean, I try to give them kudos to the fact that they tried. They tried, but they kind of
Participate
they
medal.
flopped on the thing, at the same time. Um, but I mean, the idea that the innovation that there could be something, a tool that a blind person could use, uh, you know, could help someone become an engineer on a starship. That's great, but you know, um, they should have definitely had more revolving around with him without it. Where he had, those things have to be faced. So
Which, yeah, then we swing back to, unless you have anything you want to say about the magic away concept, Aaron.
Why don't you swing back and then I'll swing forward into the magic?
Okay, so the victim villain concept, that is where, in the general scheme of things, a lot of times when you have the blind person, I'd even go as far as saying victim, villain, or mage, where like you've got the blind person, they're either going to be a villain and they're going to be some evil character like I don't remember his name, but the one character with albinism in Black Lightning, who's like the main villain. It's been a while since I've seen that series, so I don't remember his name. Or like you've got the victim, where, again, swinging back to Geordi, every time he has something going on, he's either unlucky in love or being kidnapped. And it's like, could we just find someone else to kidnap that's not the blind guy, please?
yeah, yeah,
And then you've got the sage, where it's the mystical blind person who's, they're blind, but they have some psychic power or some special magical ability that all the able-bodied people don't, because we all know how we're all special magical sages who have all this extra knowledge about like supernatural things and stuff, which give us that extra sixth sense of specialness. That's absolutely a thing, right?
speaking of sages, I just thought about it because I'd watched the more recent version of Avatar: The Last Airbender, but Toph. Toph is another one of those characters, a blind character, mine, and has the power to wield earth. And know her abilities, her sight and stuff is not, washed away, but she's like kind of has that magic-y thing going because she can use earth power to sense her surroundings, kind of like an echolocation, which is a real thing that people who are blind can do, yes, but it's still a form of magic. Kind of like the guy who in Rogue One was able to use the Force to wield a staff, which honestly is, I'm not gonna lie, pretty cool. You know,
I'll give Avatar: The Last Airbender a little bit of leeway there because a lot of people in Avatar have mystical powers and whatever, you know. I mean, if
yeah.
the person isn't the only one in the room, you know, that has the power. Like,
Oh,
I
true.
love
True, true,
Stephen
true.
King to death, but the Langoliers, the little blind girl's the psychic one.
Oh, yeah.
There. That's where I'm going
Yeah,
with it.
that's a good one. That is a good one. That's a good example there.
So yeah, I mean that's another weird thing too that always weirds me out too is this whole concept of basically this whole victimization thing, but this isn't just limited to blindness. I mean, this is just a
No.
society thing right now. I mean, it's not good either way, but this is a rampant thing right now. Everybody's victim blaming, and more people want to be the victim than they actually want to, stand up and actually solve the problem. Some people really get a thrill, really get a high, really get off to the fact that they're victimized. I mean, I really, at some level, I sort of believe that. Some people just would prefer to be the victim for some reason. Not saying they're blind people preferring it. I'm just saying in society, some people really do prefer to be the victim. And I would love to know why. It's a very interesting state of psychosis in a philosophical sense, but that's just me. Yeah. You can't magic away a disability, and it would and if I act in a production, certainly one of yours, I would, not that you would ever say it to me, but I would definitely be offended if you set some roll up for me where I had some magic power, or that. I mean, it depends on what it is, and it depends on the context of the show and of the thing. I mean, if you're in some sort of a fantasy thing and you're with all the other wizards and every wizard has a magical power, well, then you can have a magical power too. So it depends on the landscape of the drama at hand, I think.
Mhm.
But the only magical power that I know of that I have is podcasting, and that is a real magical power. Let me tell you. Not a lot
Mm-hmm.
of other people do it, so it must be a magical power, even though I'm blind. I didn't know I had that magical power. But you see, so if you use your magical power to be helpful, it also depends on how it is, what the character does. If the character uses the magical power to be helpful and not to become the victim, then that's less bad. So it kind of depends.
Yeah,
I
it
think what
does.
I mean to I think I should probably explain a little of what I mean
Sure.
better. But like what I mean when I say magic, it could. I'm not saying that magic in itself is inherently a bad thing for characters, even blind ones, to have. But like when the magic tool or device basically makes up for the fact that you have the blindness in total, like you've got again Geordie's visor, which is a device that he uses, the character in Star Trek. It's this visor he wears on his face, and it basically makes it so this character who without it is completely blind, but with it, I guess it sends electric impulses to his brain or some sort of techno babble thing here or there that makes it so he can essentially see anyway, so they never have to address the fact that he can't see. So when the magic negates the blindness in total, you might as well not have the character be blind at that point because they're never addressing it, they're never dealing with it. And the only time that he's ever without his visor is when he gets kidnapped. Therefore, the only time he's ever blind, truly blind, is when he's kidnapped. And then he immediately goes from this really competent, great engineer with the visor to not having it. And suddenly he's a victim in the sense that he's being abducted and
Yeah,
being used as a tool by these villains, you know, or they're using his device that gives him sight as a way to, I don't know, try and blow up the Enterprise or something, you know? And so then it turns these tools that help blind people into something that's a weapon. And it's just, it's kind of a little awful when you think about it, you know?
I think I would have liked to enjoyed seeing like Jordy do something um epic, like his visor shorts out and he has to do had to have done something without it and it work, you know, to show
Or
that.
even show him having to face even a normal day in the life on the Enterprise where
Yeah,
he's having to do his job without it for once, you know? Or just, I mean, like the episode that I referenced earlier with Deanna Troy, where she loses her empath ability and them using that as an allegory for a disability, you know? With that, she loses her empath ability and she has to try and learn that she can still be a counselor, you know, do she can still provide therapy to people without being able to read their emotions. Why couldn't they give that exact plot line to the guy with the visor who's blind and
yeah,
let him have that realization instead? You know, if you're going
yeah.
to tell a story about disability, why not let the disabled voice be the one to tell it? You know?
Precisely. Precisely.
And that's where consulting is kind of brought up. And you know, I think that consulting has to become more of an important thing in film because having disabled consultants that actually work with the projects at hand, I think actually um,
That could probably
help.
solve a lot of these problems, honestly.
Well,
Yeah,
it would probably depend on, or as I would say, or it would create more problems. Let's pause for 1 second.
Okay.
Just gonna have a pause here.
Okay. I'm sorry if I've got us going horribly off topic of technology.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on who the consulting is, right? I mean, that's another factor, right? Who would be working with these companies to do this consulting and things like that? That's what I would wonder. So yeah, so any other major social things that either one of you have noticed in the film industry that you really want to bring forth? Because from here, I want to also smoothly transition to talking more about the technology behind the film. So that's another huge point of interest for me. But any other points on this topic that you feel that either one of you feels they have not fully expanded on? So go ahead.
let me think. I think honestly we've covered quite a bit of them. Um, I know that there's a lot of things that happen that are external to a blind person and not just as the blind person. Um, things that get put into the films because the fact that they're done in real life too. Um, is like asking if a blind person knows sign language,
That's a
yelling
famous one.
like
Yes.
yeah. And also getting up in a person's face and yelling at them as a blind person. You know, even in a film that can be done sometimes too. Um, it's it's those kind of tropes and stereotypes that somehow make their way leaked into film and stuff. And yeah, those things could be interesting in a specific setting, if you're trying to address something. Um, but if it has you know, unless there's like no real relevance to it, like it's just there because somebody decided, well, I've seen it in real life, I should put it in my film. That's a stupid reason. You know, if you got a character that's specifically just an arbitrary a-hole, then yeah, you know, that makes sense. If they're actually, that's what they're specifically meant to be like, because you know that would be a realistic thing. But if you're just setting these things in there just to be setting them in there, it really doesn't make any sense to put them in there. It just doesn't. And yeah, that's the sort of things that really crop up, um, as far as seeing from an on-screen point of view. I mean, there's a lot of things in the backhand of production, um, but definitely a lot of things seen on screen.
Sure, sure.
Mhm.
So why don't we transition more to, so people have learned a lot about kind of the society behind film creation and filmmaking today. But one thing that I think a lot of blind people or anyone would want to know is there's been a lot of changes in the technology that can be used.
Oh yeah.
You know, God knows what we're doing right now, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, podcasting would have been something that would have been a huge undertaking. You had to go to a building and a studio, and you know, people couldn't just do it from their home office. You know, that would have been just a science fiction movie all on its own. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that the technology, the recording, the cameras, the lighting, I'm sure that these things have changed a lot since you two have gotten into the industry. So why don't you break down some of these key changes for the next part here? Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
mean, it's just mind blowing how much things have changed. Like a few years ago, I watched a documentary on the the making of the talking book books that they'd make for the talking book library and stuff like that. You know, back when they were doing them on the old cassettes and stuff like that, from start to where we are now, and it's miles apart difference, and that's just with talking books. I mean, podcasting must be about a billion miles away too, you know?
and of course, since my days in doing film in high school, we had these big, like, cameras, bulky cameras that had videotapes. You put literal VCR tapes into the camera and close it and then record. And you'd have to take that tape, put it into a machine, a VCR player, and do all of the, you know, pulling of the footage from that VCR tape and pull it into the computer with you know, a cable that actually converted all the stuff. It was a lot of work. I mean, it was a lot of work. And definitely different from today where I can just take my phone and find something I want to shoot it, bring it back to the computer, plug it in, and just import all of my footage, just like the snap of a finger, you know? It's miles away, definitely miles away, and it's smaller, you know? You don't need big, bulky cameras. Now, granted, there are cameras that have a lot more oomph and power behind them even today, like big DSLR, like Sony and stuff like that, but it's not required to get good footage. Like, there are even big industries that will still even use GoPros, they will use phones, they will use standard video camera hybrids. They will even, then they'll also use the big DSLRs. And it just depends on what your needs are, because you can do a whole lot post edit. That that
Mhm.
that has become a big thing, is that a lot of the changes and stuff you see is not in front of the camera, it's behind in the editing room where all the stuff's being cut and put on the, the editing room floor, so to say. um
Yeah,
like,
Here, it
Clock
was
block.
really amusing when we were promoting last year's film for the film challenge
Oh
that
yeah.
we did, Easterseals. We
Now that
were
never.
doing a local news segment, and the news anchor filmed it at the studio with the exact same iPhone that we filmed our film with, which was just hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to interrupt. What were you saying about clock blocked?
I'll get that in a sec. But yeah, like Phoenix said, yeah, the news stations, they even use it. It's like, so it can be considered industry standard to a degree. It really just depends on how good you can do editing afterwards. Like now I'm gonna go into clock blocked. This year's thing, I actually went in and did a bit of, you know, prettyfying with effects the film because there were certain pieces to the film that needed it. And um like when the characters Jericho and Michael, they go back in time, I had to have a way to make the transition work because frankly the two clips I had, the one where it's just them and then one where it's just the person in the past in the same bathroom, the scenes kind of didn't really sync, up between her and them appearing, and because the angles kind of shifted. So I had to make it, look transitionably good. So I decided to use an effect that had kind of this sparkling kind of thing going, like, yeah, it's gonna be they're going back in time is gonna be sparkly, okay, And I have this sound, I put this sound to it where it has this whoop, and then it has a pop at the end, and it's like, ta-da, they're suddenly there, So it was probably one of the best things I did. But I also, for their before they actually left to go back in time, I even put a filter on that scene to make it look more like it was run down because they're in the future. That place could be run down in the future, and it looks more lively in the past. So I kind of gave it that transitionable effect that you getting to see two different isms but in the same room. So
Yeah,
So
for that.
I think a lot of our blind audience, or a lot of the audience, whether they're blind or not, would want to know. So if you are blind, how would you go about actually shooting a video from your phone or tablet? I mean, from a blindness perspective, I mean, if you have no vision at all, really walk us through what you would do as far as knowing who's in frame and understanding your lighting. And I mean, there's sort of a lot of factors in there, right?
Absolutely.
yeah, there are a lot of factors, and there are a couple ways to do it. If you're alone and you can't get anyone else to help you, like in person, you can honestly use voiceover with the camera to get a general placement of where you want things. But you also have to kind of be, a little knowledgeable of your area if you're doing it alone. You want to have a good idea of what the space looks like before you do the shoot. That's important. Because if you don't know where everything is in the thing or don't have somebody to describe it, it's going to be more difficult than if you do. So either A, you have to get yourself acquainted with the space, or B, someone prior to who may be in the space, especially if it's a public space, have someone if it's a business, have somebody actually show you around, tell you what is where, what it is, kind of giving a gauging of what the space is going to be like. And otherwise you got to kind of go around, feel around a bit, kind of enter the space, walk around it, kind of gauge where everything is. Beyond that, after you get all the prepping part done, then you get yourself set up. And
Yeah, 100% orientate yourself with your environment before you ever start filming. because that'll lessen your likelihood of bloopers for sure, you know? No, I mean, I get to a point where I know exactly how many steps I have to walk from a door to a table or chair, you know? And I will walk that thing way more times than is necessary, probably, to make sure that I can figure out where it is and have just that right timing. But some people can do it quicker, some people can't. I'm just a bit of a perfectionist on that myself, but that's just me. So, yeah, get to know your area. And another tool that helps me a lot is tape. Putting tape where you want your blocking once you know the voiceover or such tells you that you're in frame. The first thing you do so you can get back to that spot is you bend down, just crouch down where you're at, and you put tape right there, directly where you want your left or right foot to be. Remember which one you want to be there.
And you
So
could
that
put
way
string
you can
under
find
it
that
too.
exact spot again. Huh?
You could put string under it too.
Yeah, you can use string and tape, whatever you feel like you need, you know? If you've got some usable vision, brightly colored duct tape is a fun way to go. That's what we used
Yes.
in our bathrooms. It adds a little bit of extra fun to the project as well as being easy for you to see. But you can just use masking tape and string. You don't have to be too fancy about things with that. And make sure nobody moves your spot. But yeah, that should theoretically be able to get you to and from, and make absolute sure you know where your tripod is so you don't hit your tripod and throw off your shot again.
Yeah.
So
But
actually,
tripods are your friend.
when you first place your tripod, put tape under the tripod, under one of the legs. So that way, actually, under multiple of the legs, correction. So that way, you know exactly where to set your tripod if you do by chance bump into it. Because the
Mhm.
worst thing and most time consuming thing is setting up your shots.
Yes. And tape, duct tape, masking tape, most tape is your friend as well as the tripod. Tripods are great because it'll keep your shots very steady. Um, Otherwise, if you have to have somebody holding it, or if you're holding it, it can kind of get that weaving effect, where you're back and forth. And there are some scenes, even in normal, in industry standard films, where they're and shows where the scene kind of just wavers a bit, like as if you're almost seeing it from a different person's perspective. But there's a lot of times where it's really stationary, and that's where tripod is like your best friend along with duct tape. So
Now, assuming you cannot use duct tape or that you cannot use a tripod, I cannot praise duct tape enough apparently today. But you can also find ways to jury rig up unique setups. Like with Clock Blocked, we did a apartment scene, well, a couple apartment scenes, and we set up three different cameras so that way we wouldn't have to run through as many takes. And we put the tripod on one side of the room. We put my iPad in its keyboard stand on top of a mini refrigerator on the other side of the room. And then from a third angle, I stacked a couple of plastic storage bins and that on top of each other to the point where it's about 5 feet tall. And I used a jewelry box, some duct tape, and a third phone, or a second phone, I should say. And we were able to get a third angle with that one. And well, we unfortunately realized that after the fact that the duct tape phone was in the shot of one of the cameras. So then we had to take that all apart and refilm without the phone in the shot. But we still had that angle stuff. So we still managed to use three separate angles. And we were able to do it in one shot, just in my sister's random apartment because of just utilizing your space around you, which is just one of the other good reasons to know your space, because you'll be able to have a much better idea of what angles you can film from and what DIY devices and setups you can throw together, so you're not having to spend hundreds of dollars on multiple tripods and lighting rings and stuff like that.
I mean, getting all of these things are a great thing, to start building up your repertoire of items.
But
Um,
realistically, it takes time, when you're first starting out.
and patience, yes. Because even when we first started out, we didn't have a whole lot. I mean, the most we had usually one phone or one camera to use, and that was it. But now we've got plenty. We got enough to do multiple different angles that like we want. And we could always still have more. Like we could get a GoPro, or we could um get a drone or something else, that can add even more depth to some of these shots that we'd like to do. But for the time being, we now have multiple phones, multiple ways to do things. I mean, we did our a good portion of our film over Zoom. I mean, there's another camera angle. We actually used our phones and computers to actually get something. So
Mhm.
it's all about being crafty. And using the blind tools that each system has, like the phones have, like Apple has voiceover and stuff like that. And I'm not sure what Androids have because I don't use them anymore. They do have their own assistant technology too. Not sure how good it is, but I'm sure that they have some that can be used while using a camera. Um, Again, I can't vouch for it though. You'd have to ask somebody who has an Android phone or tablet. But as far as Apple goes with iPhone and iPad and Mac, um, it's pretty seamless to be able to use with voiceover, uh, both as a visually impaired or blind person. Yeah, it may take time to do the shots, and yeah, it's could get a little frustrating. But if you're really into doing filming, the time and the patience is well worth it. It really is. Um,
I'm glad you brought up Zoom, actually, because that also is another sort of reference you can use. If you have a friend who's willing but can't be there in person to help you out with a shot, well, you can utilize things like Zoom or FaceTime, or
Be my
even using
eyes.
apps like Be My Eyes to try and see if you can get a person to help you be in shot. And then you can place your marker and everything else. And that's another easy way to get help from a person if they can't be there in person. We used a similar method. Didn't we use the Zoom method when we were making Service, a documentary?
Don't remember. No, I don't think we did. I think we just had people videotape their own shots for that
Yeah,
one.
I feel like I remember having either Shashank or Spencer there while
Oh,
you
we
were
did do
setting
that.
up shop.
Yes, over
Yeah,
Zoom. Yeah, they were
yeah, that's what I
doing.
was talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that part. Yeah, yeah, that part. We did have people on Zoom helping us, you know,
Helping
direct
you get the
shots.
camera light up, set up and that, and helping with direction and such. I mean, because we're in such a vast technological era right now, there are 1,000 different ways you can do films at this point, and none of them are really wrong.
No,
Or not, like there's no real method that's completely wrong unless it just 100% doesn't work for you, and then it's not wrong in general, it's just wrong for you personally.
I mean, honestly, a person who's blind can do all the stuff on their own, but I will emphasize that having a team makes things a heck of a lot easier. And it can be just one other person, or it could be 3, 4, 5, 10, could be, a whole crew, you know? Um, but teamwork actually makes the cogs in the wheel go a little faster. It really does. It can be, it doesn't have to be other disabled people or other blind people. It could be able-bodied people helping too. And that engages the fact of if they're having to face you as the person of disability, and specifically if you're blind, they have to face the fact of your blindness and how it works for you while working in film, which means it helps with awareness, but also helps show that, you can do something that, normally a sighted person is just seen as doing, and that person learns this person is capable. No
And
sense
they're
but.
they're going to take that little bit of knowledge, that one trick they saw you do, and maybe the next time they're working with another blind client, they can say, hey, so here's something I saw work successfully for someone else. If you want to try it, by all means. If not, that's completely understandable. And they're getting an education without you having to, outright educate them, just by working with you and seeing what you do. And, you know, also just teamwork makes the dream work. Projects, they tend to oftentimes be more fun when you can work with people and engage, especially just engaging in conversation and stuff. I mean, there's a certain magic behind the social quality that comes with creating art, which I'm sure as a podcast or something you can deeply
Absolutely.
resonate with.
Completely.
Yeah, like, and honestly, teamwork just, as I'll emphasize again, it actually makes things go faster. It really does. And um, you're right, Phoenix. It actually does, make it more engaging. Um, but like, there's a lot of parts about filmmaking that doesn't really fully require knowing things through blindness. I mean, like, you could still use things like technology to gauge for like certain things like props, like, and costumes, especially costumes. Like, if you want to know the color of something, you could use your technology that you have on your phone, like seeing AI or whatever it is, I think it is, or I can't remember what it is. It's one of the other um what you call
Yeah,
it,
there's a lot of those types of apps out there, and there's a lot of types of maxi aid things you can get that are color identifiers, but you have to keep in mind that you have to have a grain of salt with color identifying ones specifically,
yeah.
or with any of this technology really, because there's a lot of room
But
for
then
error.
But then again, like you go back, if you can't really gauge the color, use Be My Eyes or some other platform like that to say, hey, I'm looking for a specific color of clothing for a costume. Can you help me tell me what this color is and what type of clothing it is, or what type of cloth if you're going to be making your costumes, asking what color cloth it's going to be. Um, and then of course, props can be pretty easy to get. That's a little easier. I mean, unless you're specifically looking for a specific color of a prop, then again you can use the tools to do the same thing, like Be My Eyes, to engage with somebody to get that information. um but those are the easier parts. And like, even music composition is easy. I mean, you, Phoenix, have sat down and within like what, couple hours sometimes,
On a
just
good day.
on a good day, you'll be able to, with garage, and it will sound absolutely fantastic. But you also have a background in music as well, where you, even though you can't do the physical composition, you can do the audio part of the composition. And you could always find somebody, reach out, networking, find
Yeah.
someone who actually can do the physical composition part of it. You know, even
Or
if
actually get around to taking that Braille music course I keep needing to take.
yeah, yeah. And then like my area, like with doing clock blocked, um, doing the editing, that for me, I have to use a magnifier. But that's just because of my type of vision loss. I can still utilize my vision to some degree, but I think, and I won't swear on this, but I think you can use uh voiceover type stuff to work with Adobe products and other types of uh editing platform type stuff. Honestly, I'd have to actually look into it, but I think you can. I think it's possible. And if if a person doesn't know, the best thing to do is go where? Go to Google or go to LinkedIn. Find people who may know how to do these things. If you can't get it done yourself or whatever. But if you want to do it yourself, go to Google, look it up. Go to YouTube, see if somebody else is, put up a YouTube about it, or even a podcast or some other thing. It does require a little bit of research on behest of the person wanting to do the work. you know? Um, but it can happen. It can work, and there are, even as myself, and I'm sure that a lot of able-bodied people have had this problem too, losing your work. I have I have had the monstrosity, of almost losing my editing, multiple times. And I swear I'm not sure how I don't have white hairs because of it yet. But, you know, um, yeah, it can happen to anyone. And it editing is one of those things. It's a big task to undertake. So, I kind of prefer just being behind the camera directing. But when you're a small group, you got to kind of wear many hats. So,
Yes, all the hats.
yeah, and that's why I really emphasize teams. Teams, 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 teams. If you can get somebody who's better than you at doing editing, get them. If you have somebody who's better running a camera, get them. If you have somebody who's better at doing makeup, get them, because you'll be doing yourself a very big favor.
But at the
'Cause
same time, it's also a good thing to, learn how to wear multiple hats because, you know,
yes.
um, the more hats you can wear, for one, the more of a marketable your skills become. And for two, well, the more you'll be able to be independent with your project making if that's something you want to do. Like for Clock Blocked, um, I helped my sister and I wrote the script together. We we designed the costumes. We designed the props, and we did all the shopping for the supplies and stuff. My sister's the one who put the props together and ironed on the letter. We got all the letters ironed on for the costumes and such. And then I directed things and did the stunt coordinating. Helped with ideas for camera angles, did the music. And then on Shay's end, what all hats did you wear for this? Oh yeah, I
Well,
also did. Sorry, I forgot
I
about
will
that.
say that I'm the one who actually got the entry put in. I did basically a lot of the production.
Yeah, you were the executive producer, so yeah, the paperwork for sure.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of paper shuffling. So, I got all of the back end stuff done. The editing and some acting, you know. I had three technical tasks, and and a little bit of afterwards, the publicity stuff. So,
Yeah.
um
Oh
so
yeah, I
about
did
four hats.
too. Didn't you also put the captions in, or was that somebody else?
No, that's done by the thing. I put in some of the audio description
Oh,
along
okay.
with
Was
their,
okay.
you know, um, but yeah, no, I definitely wore a lot of hats. Not as probably as many, but you know, I decided to take that back seat on the directing and stuff like that because, you know, I had a lot to focus on. So
Well, that
Phoenix
editing
got
is actually a pretty huge hat, though, when you think about it, you know,
yeah,
'cause just
yeah.
hours worth of footage to go through.
Yeah, you really have to want to do that job. It's one of those things, you know, you do or you don't. And I don't mind it. You know, I like looking at footage and I like snipping it and putting it in pretty little places and stuff. But I will say it is a very, very daunting undertask. It really is. It's a very daunting task to do.
Oh, yes, especially because one of the easiest hacks you can go with when it comes to the cameras and stuff is, well, to do as few takes as possible where you have to stop and start the camera because, like, as blind people, as I mentioned, it's very easy to run into that tripod or hit the wrong button or this or that, you know? And so if you can just keep the camera rolling constantly, then that's a great thing, even if you're doing multiple takes. You just, you know, you have your clapboard or whatever you use to say take one, take three, whatever. But yeah, then you don't have to stop and start your cameras, and you don't have as much chance of having that weird shift of camera problem and such. And
As
like, there's a lot of footage, like for our gag reel, for just one scene alone, where it's the scene where my sister's character, Michael, and Shay's character, Francesca, are in doing their Zoom meeting, essentially. And my character comes in with the empty cup of coffee that gets thrown at them. Well, we had about 112 minutes of just everything that happened from the time we set up in the room to the time when we left. And by the time she edited the gag reel down, it came down to 15 minutes. So there's a lot of fluff to cut out.
yeah, as a from an editor's point of view, kind of as speaking on behest of footage, the best thing to have on hand as a person who's doing editing, because the footage is going to take up a lot of CPU, you know, gigabyte space and stuff like that, and it's going to really boggle down a computer. An external drive, big one, terabyte or
Mhm.
more, because otherwise you're going to run out of space, and you want to be able to offload. If you're especially if you're using a phone, you want to be able to offload all of that footage as soon as possible because you're going to want to be able to put more footage on, and you don't want it also you don't want it to be lost within a bunch of pictures or
Mm-hmm.
video. So
Yeah, absolutely. Both of you are giving really a tremendous amount of great information. So, how do camera angles work, by the way? What have you learned about the angling of a camera, the lighting? What have you learned about that?
um since I've done a lot of study in that field area, um angles are very important when it comes to what you want to tell story wise. And it doesn't matter if you're disabled or not. You want to have a kind of a grasp of what mood you want to put for uh your characters. Like um a lot of times straight point views, that's very like standard kind of setting. Close-ups, you're kind of getting an imperson you're getting a more personalized feel of being, you know, hearing what they're trying to say. You know, because wider shots you're going to get a broader view of things. And closer shots you're going to get more intimacy. Up angle shots, like when you're going from below facing kind of up, it it kind of gives a grandiose almost, or like this suspensey kind of feel to it in some cases, depending on the genre you're working with. um like, I can't think of any movies in particular, but like when they do like big cities and you see the tall skyscrapers and they're pointing the kind of camera up and looking upward, it's trying to give that grand view of like the city, but also these one or two people are talking in that scene to show that there's two people in this grand city, you know, kind of feel. Or if you're looking down, it's like you're trying to have that omnipresent look, that feel like you're kind of coming into the world or you're kind of flying over the world. And then there's the hidey spot angles where you got something where it's like looks like it's hidden behind something that gives that secretive feel, like somebody's watching, you know, like either a person or a hidden camera. And of course, lighting also puts in a mood too. So like if you're going to have natural lighting without like fluorescence or anything else, that can give, you know, a subtle sort of view, you know, a rough cut kind of ism to it. But if you have like fluorescent lighting in there, it gives that more homey feel, maybe depending on the tone of the lighting. Like let's say is green lighting. Now green lighting is often associated, and red lighting, with horror and dystopian kind of feels to them. But like soft blue lighting could be more I guess dramatic, you know, just a subtle stories, maybe
The
more.
immediate thing I think of when I think of the blue filter lighting in that is I immediately think of the first Twilight movie and how it was just so much blue.
Oh yeah, it had the very dampened feel to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
To
I
try,
think a lot
I'm guessing they were trying to convey the Washington
the
uh,
Washington
landscape.
maybe, which would have technically been more accurate if it was a little more gray muted than blue
Yeah.
muted, if we're going to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I've never been to Washington State, but I do vaguely remember that film. I vaguely remember what you're talking about. It did seem, yeah, certain times, whether it's a blind person doing the filming or not, certain times I think, you know, they sometimes can overemphasize the coloration a little bit. Sometimes it can be
Yeah.
overdone. And that's
Yeah.
also a problem. The trick is to get it just right.
So I mean,
That's the trick. Yeah.
like a romance scene. Like I've watched plenty of romance movies, even though I'm not a huge romance person, but I've
It
sat
seems
down with.
like you are if you've watched plenty of them.
Well, my family's watched plenty of them. I've sat and watched with them. Um,
Okay.
but like, there's a few that are notable. With some good lighting in them is like, uh, You've Got Mail. That was a pretty good one. Um, there's a couple Christmas Hallmark ones that I've watched. Good Witch, the series Good Witch. Oh, that one has some great lighting in it. Um, and it gives that soft feel, like that good feely kind of feel to it, because there's a lot of soft fluorescence used in a lot of the buildings, so that it kind of gives that, you know, just subtle, soft, you know, almost satiny feel to it. You know, um, I mean, versus like Walking Dead, you're gonna have some really crazy lighting in that one, like again the green kind of lighting.
Yeah, and you also have the thing where so many movies make things really dark, or you have the very notable flashback colors and stuff like that, you know?
Like the sepia. Well, a lot of that stuff, a lot of flashback, like sepia flashbacks. Those are a post edit kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that does give a certain feel to it. Like, you know, you want to do flashbacks, you gotta have that. You want, depending on how you want it, you either want a kind of a faded kind of thing where it's definitely notable it's a flashback, or sepia tone because it's like it's a memory, but it's not happening right then. You know, those things can add or detract from a scene
Yes.
or whatever. So
They're good things to keep in mind when you're coming up with your ideas and stuff like that, even if it's stuff that's done in like in the editing process and such like that, you know?
And
Um,
big thing, a
Even
big
going into some of the writing stuff, I went into it having to think about what kind of things are you going to do with post editing, like for example in Clock Blocked, where we had the agents in the basement doing their action scene thing. In that, I was immediately worried the lighting in there would be too dark and kind of weird, because we filmed it basically in the basement of a building and this series of hallways that just had this, I guess, weird yellow lighting. I guess it looks kind of old and creepy, and like has this haunted house vibe to it a little. Did you have to do anything special to up or down the lighting there?
um which one was it again?
The action sequence during the beginning narration.
No, that one I left it kind of as is. Um, but
Yeah,
you know, if I had more time, I would have probably done something to it, to give it a
yeah,
more feel. But one of the ones that I did a good example, actually, even though it was my student film, a good example of mood change for lighting was Vanished. And I used, like, because I couldn't exactly turn the lights off in the building, but we used for one of the scenes. And so I'm like, how am I going to fix this? I'm going to make this look like it's in the dark. So I gave and put a filter post edit on the scene. And I used kind of a night vision green, and it worked. It made it look like it was eerie. It made it look dark in there. It was great. I was like, wow, this is impressive. So the power of Adobe is kind of something. But it does set the mood quite well, you know. So
Excellent. That's a lot of great information. What are some other things that come to your mind that both of you want to share about the actual equipment that's used and how blind people can do this? Because we see that you guys are doing it. As we've talked about before, I've spoken to Lance once. He does this, and there's a lot more blind people that are getting into this, and I think it can be really a great space to get into. So, what are some other huge things you both want to share?
I was gonna say a big thing is
Hmm.
you don't have to have lighting kits. You don't have to. It's not required. It's great to have them, but you don't have to have them to make lighting function. You can just take your uh, lamps and stuff that's already in your home or whatever, and use those if you're doing one in your own home. Like, you can move those around and get them kind of where you want them, but they have to, if you're using them for specifically for lighting, you have to have them behind you outside of the view of the camera. Otherwise, if they're in front of you, then they're part of the scene. So you, to get that extra lighting, if you want extra lighting, you have to have those things behind you. But it's nice to have an actual light kit, because usually those have a big, like, thing behind them, a white covering behind them, so that way it reflects the light off. And
What's a light
makes
kit?
a light kit is, basically it's a tripoded object that has a light on it, and it has a kind of an umbrella looking thing behind it. And the light, when it's on, it bounces the light, the umbrella looking part bounces the light off, and it actually sends the light back towards the scene that you're actually trying to shoot. So basically, you'll be able to get better lit faces and stuff and surrounding area.
Hmm.
But most,
Basically, it's like a bigger ring light is what I'm picturing.
kind
Base
of, kind of. Um,
kind of.
ring lights don't have the umbrella behind them, but it's like, I don't know if you've ever been to a photo shoot or not, like getting your picture taken.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like those are light kits.
Okay, I know what you mean now. All right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
um
and light rings also can be a useful tool.
yes, yes, light rings are absolutely a useful tool. um let's see. Moving from lights though. Audio.
Sound-
Um,
Audio, yeah, we were both thinking the same area. That happens when you work with someone long enough. You just become one brain.
yeah, pretty much. Audio, it's not required, but if you really want to make almost real quality work, you're gonna want either an extra phone about that actually has like memos or some other voice recording thing on it, because a lot of times the phone or camera that you're using doesn't have great audio on it. And if
Yeah,
you don't have like a big business thing where you got all the brand hoo-ha stuff that a lot of industries, have, um, having an extra phone around that just does the audio alone helps. And then you can actually take the audio from there because when you do the scene and take, you get to actually take the audio from that same scene and take and sync them up when you're doing post
Sure.
edit. And it makes the
Sure.
sound actually more, you know, better.
Magnified and
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
absolutely.
better
Know
in a lot of
microphone
cases.
types, know what they can do if you are going to
Hmm.
use phones, be be conscientious of your scenes you're going to do. I mean, you're not going to want to run down the hall with a lapel mic. I mean, sure, it's portable, but people are just going to hear so much swish, 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 you know?
Yeah, uh, that's where a lot like having a phone or another audio recording device around helps. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, even bigger independent film users will honestly get something like an Olympus with
Yeah.
audio
Olympus
recording
and boom mics
and
and,
a boom mic, yeah. Um,
or
but
like, those one microphones that you used during last year's challenge.
yeah,
I can't
Yeah.
remember what they were. Do you?
um, no, I can't remember off the top of my
I
head.
can't remember, but I think they were omnidirectional microphones of some type that you could plug into your phone.
Yeah,
If I can find the name of them, I will send it to you and you can put it in the description or something if I can figure out what they were. But yes, you don't need big fancy microphone equipment unless you're doing a bigger project
Sure.
and stuff. But weirdly enough, the voice memos recorder on your phone can
It's
actually do quite a bit.
and it's incredible. That's what I was saying before, is that this technology that we all have, we're just with our phones, with our home computers, our microphones right in our rooms, this technology that we have right now is already doing incredible stuff without it being professional level quality. It's already good, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
That's why a lot of people are too afraid to get into podcasting. Oh, I can't record. Oh, it's too hard. Oh, my mic won't. No, actually you can. You'd be surprised. Just recording on your phone sounds really good most of the time.
Oh,
Not, I mean, obviously, when you get a bigger audience, you need to have a better mic over time, better microphone skills, public speaking skills over time. But no, you'd be surprised. Just pushing play, pushing record, and off to the races,
yeah.
that can really do wonders. I want to take this time to say thank you to both of you for joining me again for a deep dive in film. Everything we wanted to know. We covered a lot tonight. But I would like to wrap up another beautiful episode by asking you each the question that you're anticipating. I want to know, so now that you know a little bit more about me and you're starting to get used to more of my stuff and you're starting to get used to my interest in film and participating in such things. So what is maybe one final question that each of you or collectively you two would like to ask me?
you
Hmm.
want to go first this time, Shay?
I don't even know who went first last time, so she can go first.
Oh, thanks. Put me right on the spot. Um, uh, um, let's see.
Okay, Phoenix, back to you. Go.
Okay, I'll go first. So as a podcaster, what would you say is the most adaptive skill that you've had to utilize to be successful in this particular field as a blind podcaster, or visually impaired, I should say?
Well, you should definitely say blind because
Okay, not sure what your vision level is. Sorry about that.
well, it doesn't matter because we're blind because we are.
Yeah, it's fair. I know people kind of toggle over that problem, and
Well,
yeah.
I'm not. I don't toggle. Don't accuse me of toggling.
No, no, no.
There's no toggle
Yeah.
switch here. There's no toggle. I'm blind.
No, no,
No
no.
toggle.
I'm just trying to,
Trying to balance
honor
out.
what you might feel.
Right. No, you're trying to balance out the fact that I'm not diplomatic and that I should be. No, I know. I know. I know that occasionally I should sugarcoat things and I never do, which that's me. If you want someone that's never going to sugarcoat, that's me. No, I think the greatest sense of adaptability from a podcaster's perspective is not about the blindness, just like we were saying with your acting stuff, your filming stuff that you guys do. It's not about that. The greatest skill to be adaptive is to keep doing it, is to keep trying. That's truly what it's about. It's about repetitively putting together episodes over years of doing it until you discover how much you enjoy doing it. I have found that there are certainly certain programs. Zoom is a wonder for podcasting. There's that one. Then there's some hosting platforms that are very good for podcasting that really help to build the RSS feed and a stable feed out to Spotify and all the directories and things like that. But overall, the skill that you need is the same skill that you guys have. Keep doing it. Keep pushing record and keep trying. That's what it's really about. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure. All right, Midnight.
Okay. I don't know if we talked about this in the last one or not, but like, if you had to do like the crew end of a production, which area would you want to actually work yourself into?
I don't know. I kind of do know, but I have to ask another question. Where do you see me working?
I actually would see you doing probably sound and audio. That's kind of where I'd see you actually being, is doing sound mix downs. Probably I could see the two of you working together doing stuff, like her doing mostly music and you doing more like the audio vocal mix
Like
down.
voiceover. Yeah.
I'm going to do public relations myself.
That too. That's a good one.
Because, having the gift of gab is a useful thing to have in that particular area. Being well spoken, well connected, enjoying what you do.
Yeah. You guys mentioned a couple musicians, or not really, but you were saying how, you want more help with your music. Well, and here at Aaron's Opinion, we have like several musicians who are blind who are very knowledgeable about music production, and they would love to help you. If you joined my WhatsApp group, you would be able to meet them, and they would love to help write some music for you. They would be amazing music people for you guys to have in your corner for sure. So,
and luckily I've already joined the WhatsApp.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say you would need, so nobody would have ever known that you had, because you should say something with your voice so that we actually know who you are in there, you see.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, why? Well, okay. Well, please, no, seriously. I mean, please send your voice so that people, good heavens, I never would have known. How am I supposed to know who's in there? I never would have known.
That's complete.
I think there's just the craziness of getting the production for the film challenge.
No. It's totally fine that you haven't introduced yourself, but I do prefer WhatsApp. So once you send a voice message in that group, we would be able to connect you with. I mean, do you want to work with musicians? Because I have like,
oh heck yeah.
Well,
we want to work with everybody.
well, have you heard the line? Have you heard the famous line in the movie industry? You're killing me.
Yes.
You guys are kind. Has anybody told me? Nobody. You guys needed to tell me, Aaron. if you're going to be a podcaster who works with people in the film industry, they are really hard to work with, and they are not necessarily the most logical, not always the most logical people. It's like you join a group, right? You join my club. I spend the time to get you into the club. I mean, you're killing me, okay? Send a voice message in that thing. Don't apologize. Send a voice message for goodness sake, and introduce.
Okay.
I mean, you do realize now I'm gonna have to ask you to like sing a song in that group. Now I'm gonna have to test you in that group. Hey, who's ever that Phoenix or Midnight or out there, you need to sing for us so that we know you're actually in there. Oh man, you're killing me. Okay, I'm gonna put you up to it. Well, I think after this conversation, I think we're gonna hear a voice message for whoever it was, between whoever it was who joined, which that's part of the problem. Since neither one of you sent a voice message, I don't know which one of you joined it. So
It's Midnight. It's
Yeah.
Shay. She's the
Yeah,
one who joined.
boy,
I-
you
I-
aren't supposed don't look, you aren't supposed to throw your crew under the bus like that. Sheesh. Okay.
She does it all the time. I'm used to it
Yes.
now.
I'm worse off because I haven't joined yet because I'm socially awkward. You
I don't
never
care.
know.
I am the
But-
most socially awkward person I've ever met. So you don't have to be all embarrassed. Why are people in the film industry so self-conscious? I mean, you would think it would be the other way around, considering that I'm producing stuff for Apple Podcasts and iHeartRadio and things. You would think that I would be self-conscious, but really, I think it's interesting about that industry. There is a level of self-consciousness that I see with the film industry. I've noticed that. You guys are very shy people sometimes. I've always noticed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me that comes from the fact that sometimes I'm more comfortable playing a character than even being in my own skin. And
Well, that's fine.
but
That's
yes.
fine. Be a character named Phoenix. We already have a Phoenix in the group. All right, you two. Well, look. On a fun note, that was a lot of fun for me to talk and geek out about that. Yeah, Midnight. I'm gonna be figuring out who you are in that group, because one of the things that I really want to do at Aaron's Opinion is I want to be able to genuinely help people, but I can't help people get productions off the ground if they don't introduce themselves with their voice and tell me it's them. So
I know.
Yeah.
okay, well, come on over. We'll get. I can put you in touch with several musicians who are producing stuff on their own channels. They know how to write music. They will. You'll be taken care of. Your music will be taken care of at Aaron's Opinion, and you'll be fascinated by who the people are. But there's two people that I have interviewed that are utterly brilliant musicians. Anyway, all sounds good. I really hope to be able to help you guys with a production at some point, either in person, maybe if you came to my side of the universe, or even mostly though online using my voice, because this is something that I just love doing this. I love using my voice to educate people and things like that. So anyway though. So hope to hear from both of you soon, and it was a wonderful conversation. And as far as descriptions go, you guys can either just put out a description, send me a description for this one talking about how we're going to talk about film, or I'll just use the description that we already have. I think either one would suffice. But either way, though, you can send me a description if you want, and that would be perfect. Perfect, Midnight. All right then, you two. Well, take care. Take care, everybody. And let's see. Yeah. So take care, everybody. And as we say here at Aaron's Opinion, thank you for joining us this evening. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Help one person today. Help 1 million people tomorrow. So there you go. If you're still on YouTube, comment below. We would love to see some feedback on YouTube about this. And if you want to get in touch with Midnight and Phoenix, definitely try to get in touch with Cryo Dragon Productions. Anyway, everybody. All right, YouTube. Well, we will catch up. Hopefully, I'm going to hold you to it. We'll catch up either on Discord or on WhatsApp a little later. But take care for now, and have a good evening. And we'll talk very soon on either one of those platforms. So take care, everybody. Like the video, comment below, tickle the bell notification, all that stuff. And we will see you here very soon. Thank you. And help one person today. Help 1 million people.